Want to know how to separate a soil into its sand, silt, clay, and organic particles? Today we're going to show you how. Knowing the texture of your soil is important because it determines all kinds of things, like the soil's ability to provide water to plants, its potential for erosion, and the total amount of nutrients that can be stored within it. To do this, you will need a clear jar with straight sides and a cup of water and obviously some soil to separate. Start by scooping up your sample of soil. I am sampling in our kale bed today. To make sure I get a good topsoil sample, I dug down around 6 inches and mixed my soil up a little bit. Once you've dug down to the right depth, fill your jar 1/3 of the way with your sample. Then, you're going to fill the rest of your jar with water. It should look like this. Next, you're going to stir up your jar. It's important to get all of your soil mixed up into the water column, so make sure you stir thoroughly. After you've completely stirred up your soil and water mixture, leave the jar alone for about 1 hour. What you'll see start to happen is your particles will settle out of the water column based on the size of the particle. The first particles that you'll see settle out are the sand particles. They fall out of the water column first because they're the heaviest particle. The next layer that will form is made up of silt particles. Silt particles are about 0.02 of a millimeter to 0.05 of a millimeter in diameter. They're your middle size. The last particles to settle out are your clay particles. These particles are smaller than 0.02 of a millimeter and are often very flat, so they take a lot longer to settle out. Think of the clay settling out like dropping a piece of paper. When you drop a flat piece of paper, it tends to float down to the ground slowly, instead of dropping straight down like a basketball or a large rock would. Now you also might start to notice that the water looks very cloudy and brown. The particles still in suspension or in the water are your organic material. So everything that once was living and is now just decayed material. So you can find that in your water column still and then floating on the surface of your jar. After about an hour, your soil should have pretty distinct layers. And depending on where you took your soil sample, you might have different amounts of sand, silt, clay, and organic, so yours might look slightly different than ours. You can always leave it for longer than an hour. This will just increase the amount of settling that you have of your different particles. But I hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial on how to separate soil into its different particles.